Cruises were cut short, ports were erased, and a family who chose a cruise line for its autism-friendly certification watched their holiday unravel in just 90 minutes. At the same time, a major private destination project has been halted by a judge, adding uncertainty to future itineraries cruisers have been planning around. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. Harmony of the Seas returned to Galveston a day early. Odyssey came back to New Jersey a day late. Carnival Pride limped into Baltimore behind schedule, and basically Winter Storm Fern forced cruise lines into real-time decisions last weekend, and guests on both ends of those sailings felt the impact. Harmony, sailing a Western Caribbean itinerary from Galveston, cut the cruise short to get ahead of the storm, and that decision, which I talked about last week, ended up canceling a scheduled stop in Cozumel. Now, for guests on board, the cruise ended sooner than expected, and for those waiting to board the next sailing, the turnaround timing shifted but ultimately did hold. And up in the Northeast, Odyssey of the Seas could not make it back to Cape Liberty on schedule. The ship returned a day late, which shortened the next cruise by a day. Port calls in San Juan and St. Thomas were also canceled and replaced with sea days. So yes, Winter Storm Fern has wreaked havoc on cruise world. Hopefully I won't be impacted by the time you watch this video. I will be in sunny, well, maybe not so sunny. They're actually expecting really low temperatures, Orlando, and heading to Port Canaveral for my annual birthday cruise on board Carnival Mardi Gras. But this is a reminder, all of these disruptions always arrive the day before embarkation. Watch the forecast in the days leading up to your cruise. Always have travel insurance. I do an annual plan that covers all of my trips, not just cruises, but road trips. And do not assume that the itinerary you booked is the itinerary that you will actually sail. So weather disruptions, yeah, they're super frustrating, but they pass. And of course, cruise lines are going to make decisions in the best interest of the safety of the passengers and the crew. So all of this winter madness has just been a reminder of all of these important things that sometimes frequent cruisers take for granted. Now, in more exciting cruise news, the long-anticipated Discovery class, well, it's now official. I've talked about this a lot. There's been a lot of rumors, but Royal Caribbean has officially signed agreements with a shipyard in France for 2 firm orders with options for 4 additional vessels. The first ship is scheduled to debut in 2029, and the second is slated for 2032. Now, Royal Caribbean has been unusually quiet about this whole project. As I mentioned, I've talked about this a lot in cruise news. There's been a lot of rumors. The rumors have turned out, obviously, to be true, but we've not heard much about size, features, and deployment. But there is widespread speculation, though, that this Discovery class is going to be intentional about building mid-sized vessels, potentially in the 70 to 100,000 gross tonnage range. So that would make them significantly smaller than the Oasis and the Icon class ships that have been defining Royal Caribbean's fleet and actually their entire brand in recent years, as it's been this race to bigger, more things, more razzle-dazzle. But I, for one, welcome this because smaller ships would give the cruise line access to ports that these megaships just simply cannot serve. We're talking smaller Mediterranean destinations, Alaska, the South Pacific, and other regions where size restrictions or pier limitations keep those big cruise ships away. Now, there's also talk that the Discovery class could eventually replace the aging Vision class ships, which date back to the 1990s, which in cruise land is pretty ancient. This adds to an already aggressive build schedule. Legend of the Seas arrives this summer. There are 2 more Icon class ships coming in 2027 and 2028, and a new Oasis class ship is also scheduled for 2028. So man, Royal Caribbean, you got that cruise ship assembly line. You're churning them out. Now, if this Discovery class delivers what cruisers have been hoping for, it does mark a meaningful shift in how Royal Caribbean thinks about itinerary planning and fleet diversity. The Discovery class announcement signals where Royal Caribbean is headed, and the earnings call that accompanied it revealed something more immediate about where cruise prices are going. If you've been sitting back and waiting for Caribbean cruise port prices to drop as more ships flood the market, supply and demand, right? So there's more supply to satisfy that demand, but then supply starts to outstrip the demand. Well, hold your horses. Royal Caribbean's CEO just delivered bad news for cruisers. Good news for Royal Caribbean in the cruise industry. Despite the significant capacity growth this year, pricing in the Caribbean is up across all 3 of the company's brands. The company is seeing high demand for the Caribbean, which we know, even anecdotally, you see it if you cruise, not just in volume, but he's also seeing a greater acceptance of what guests are willing to pay. He acknowledged that, yeah, this might not be what some analysts on the call wanted to hear, given ongoing speculation that the Caribbean market could soften, but he described it as the reality that Royal Caribbean is seeing on the ground. Now, this implication for cruisers is pretty obvious. You know what this means? Higher prices. Royal Caribbean's investment in all of these new fancy ships, the big ones, Discovery class, all of these things, private destinations like Perfect Day at Coco Cay, the Royal Beach Club, and Perfect Day Mexico. And by the way, we got some unexpected news coming up on that one, so stick around for that. And onboard experiences, they're commanding premium premium prices, even in a more competitive environment. Now, booking earlier rather than waiting for last-minute deals, that's almost always going to be the smarter play, especially for popular ships and itineraries. So higher prices, yeah, not the news any of us wants to hear. That hurts, but at least they're predictable. What happened to one family on a holiday cruise recently, however, was anything but. 90 minutes. That's how long a 31-year-old autistic man was given, allegedly, to pack his bags and leave a cruise ship on Christmas Eve in Cozumel. His mom and his brother disembarked with him. No charges were ever filed. The family had specifically chosen Celebrity Cruises because of its autism-friendly cruise line certification through Autism on the Seas. Caroline Pirro was traveling with her family on a 7-night Caribbean holiday cruise to celebrate the holidays and her 60th birthday. Her oldest son, Sean Curran, has autism. And 4 days into the cruise, according to the family, Curran was approached by an unidentified teenage girl who asked him to buy her a Long Island iced tea. Now, according to reports, Curran did not know that the drink contained alcohol, and he complied. He later socialized with the minor in one of the ship's hot tubs. The girl's parents found them and confronted Curran, and he was escorted to ship security. So that's not unexpected. As the parent of underage children, underage girls, we do expect this kind of thing to happen. We expect security to be on the lookout. We expect them to act if we report this type of interaction. But what puts a little bit of a twist on this is the fact that Curran provided a written statement explaining that he has autism and he was just trying to be nice. He wasn't trying to be creepy. He wasn't trying to be like a predator. But security leadership decided, nah, you gotta go. He was given 90 minutes to leave the ship. And the family was notified that even the FBI and Homeland Security would be notified. Pirro told the Philadelphia Inquirer that despite all the information available about autism and the documentation the family provided, there was no compassion shown to her son. Security treated him like a full functioning adult without accounting for how his disability affects his understanding of social situations. And that's why the family's really upset and why the media have gotten involved. Now, after the story became public, Royal Caribbean Group, which owns Celebrity Cruise Lines, they issued an apology. A spokesperson acknowledged that the company could have been more sensitive during the disembarkation process, and the company said crew members would receive additional training on handling guests with mental disabilities. Pirro has requested reimbursement for the $20,000. Okay, pause. Who spends that on a celebrity cruise? And side note, that seems like a lot of money for a celebrity cruise, but I digress. But anyway, the family has requested reimbursement of $20,000 for the money spent on the cruise and related expenses, and it's unclear whether that request will be granted. Now, cruise lines, they have a responsibility to respond to reports involving minors. Security teams, they make judgment calls oftentimes in real time, and heaven knows we're gonna jump on cruise lines and their security teams if we don't think that they act in a way that they should, because a lot of times these cruise lines catch a lot of smoke for being too lax with this stuff. But the way this unfolded in this case has drawn some scrutiny. So I want to know what you think. Did Celebrity Cruise Line security team act appropriately? Should they have been more sensitive? As the parent of a teen child myself, I kind of see both sides on this. The cruise lines obviously have an obligation to be sensitive to cruisers with autism and other developmental delays and be accessible to those things, but they also have an obligation to ensure that their cruisers are in a safe environment. So this is a tough one, but I want to know what you think. Drop your comments and thoughts below and let's talk ship about it. Now that story, it's hard to sit with. It's, at least in my opinion, kind of nuanced here. But the next one involves a different kind of accountability, this time from a court in Mexico. Perfect Day Mexico was supposed to open, as I've reported, in late 2027 with a whole bunch of fun stuff. With more than 30 water slides, including the tallest in North and South America, capacity for 20,000 guests daily. Actually, that sounds pretty miserable, at least in my opinion. But this week, a Mexican judge has ordered construction to stop. The injunction came from a Quintana Roo district court following a request from the environmental group Right to a Healthy Environment. The organization is not opposed to Royal Caribbean's project, which is expected to bring significant economic benefits to the region, but the group argues that there are land use irregularities that need to be resolved before construction continues. Protection of the local mangrove ecosystem is the central concern here. Mangroves are critical for water filtration and erosion control along the coast, and there are also questions about whether the project could strain the area's sanitation infrastructure. A hearing in the coming days will determine whether the suspension must remain in place while environmental studies are conducted. Now, this is not the first challenge to the project. A change.org petition started in August 2025 has already garnered more than 357,000 signatures, citing environmental concerns and the potential impact on the small fishing village of Mahahual. Royal Caribbean has stated that there are no plans to develop the specific mangrove conservation area and that restoration efforts would improve the habitat. Now, this is a big investment for Royal Caribbean. The project alone represents more than $600 million in investment, announced. And if that injunction is extended, that late 2027 timeline obviously is probably gonna shift. So for cruisers looking forward to Perfect Day Mexico as part of future Western Caribbean itineraries, this is worth keeping an eye on because it might change. The project is not canceled, but there is for now at least real uncertainty about whether or not it will open on schedule. Now, legal battles and environmental reviews, they take time to resolve, obviously, but for Carnival cruisers, this week brought something they can jump on right this moment. A $30 per day drink package does not sound like exciting or headline news, but for Carnival cruisers like me, who are not big drinkers or they don't drink alcohol at all, this week's announcement ends months of waiting. So if you follow cruise news, and I've covered this as well, Carnival rolled out a Cheers Zero Proof package, and it's now available to book across all 2026 sailings. Carnival brand ambassador John Heald confirmed the rollout after months of questions from guests who were excited about this, but they were eager to lock down that popular non-alcoholic drink option. The package includes premium coffees, specialty teas, smoothies, milkshakes, energy drinks, bottled water, all of the stuff, zero-proof cocktails and alcohol-free beer and sparkling wine. And Carnival has been stepping up their non-alcoholic or zero-proof mocktail options, giving more variety. Now, unlike Carnival's alcoholic Cheers package, zero proof can be purchased individually, which is really nice because if you cruise off and you know that cruise lines require if one person in the cabin buys the drink package, all the adults have to buy it. And that's frustrating for non-drinkers like me when I cruise with friends who are drinkers. It ends up being a waste of money for the non-drinker. But that is not the case here. You do not need everyone in your cabin to buy it. And that makes it far more appealing for mixed groups where one person wants premium non-alcoholic drinks and others do not. Now, there is one rule to keep in mind. If another adult in your stateroom who is 21 or older purchases the regular Cheers package with alcohol, you cannot substitute zero proof. Some people think that, oh, this is a great hack that's gonna save me money when I have a drinker and a non-drinker sharing a room. Not gonna fly. Carnival requires all adults in that cabin to have the same package type. The package does also follow the same wait rule between drink orders. You can't just basically order drink after drink. There's a 10-minute wait period. And it does not, and this irks me endlessly, it does not extend to private destinations like Carnival Celebration Key or Princess Key. Most of the other cruise lines do allow their drink packages to work on their private island destinations. Carnival and Holland America Line are two exceptions to the rule, and it drives me crazy. It's such a money grab. The response since the package launched in September has been really strong, and obviously strong enough that Carnival has now provided it and made it available for the entire year.